It's kind of interesting, the events that led me to not only make a Matt Gaetz video, but two of them. And I'll get into the details of what actually drew me here, but it was actually a happenstance view of a publication article online that brought up several points that I had not realized about Gaetz. And then I said, well, I really don't know much about him at all, to be honest. Uh, Essentially, I used to look at him pretty much as somebody who pulled stunts all the time to kind of get himself on TV or media or whatever was going on. Saw him on Tim Pool, and he seemed kind of like a regular guy there, but you never know what you're seeing on something like that. I mean, a lot of these political people can act well, put on personas, etc., etc. Heard a little bit about what happened to him criminally, but him not being my rep and really not having an impact on me, I didn't look into it very much. Well, obviously, with this nomination, it all changes. So, the video I did earlier today addresses what I now understand about the criminal investigations into things of his. We're going to talk a little bit about his accomplishments in Congress. Uh, he submitted the contents of Hunter Biden's missing laptop into evidence. Essentially, when it's something the congressman can do is basically put things into the congressional record, which then makes it available to the public. He exposed career Republicans for insider trading, including one representative who invested in Raytheon the day before the Ukrainian war. Uh, he railed against Fauci for the pandemic and crimes against humanity, as well as the gain of function research that ultimately, it turns out, he either directly or indirectly funded. He confronted the FBI on numerous occasions on abuse against whistleblowers. He was instrumental in trying to get the Disarm the IRS Act, which aimed at removing the Internal Revenue Service's law enforcement capabilities. He championed transparency in government, notably by vocally supporting the release of the FBI's memo regarding surveillance abuses. Uh, Despite his public persona, and I'm quoting an unheard article here, Gaetz has a legislative record that breaks from traditional GOP corporate friendly policies, favoring the taxpayer and the consumer. He was involved with the Ending Platform Monopolies Act, co sponsored with Democrats like David Cicilline. I believe I'm pronouncing that correct. This bill aimed at addressing the anti competitive practices of tech platforms. And by the way, he's reached across the aisle on numerous items. So he's willing to work with anybody if it's something that's important to him. He was involved with the Break Up Big Tech Act. Although it didn't pass, he supported efforts to break up large tech companies to foster competition. He supported the introduction of the Data Care Act to impose a duty of care to online providers to protect user data. In other words, basically that they couldn't just give it away willy nilly. There had to be some kind of actual controls on it. Advocated for the legislation to ban non compete agreements, arguing that they restricted labor mobility and hurt wages. This aligns with efforts to strengthen worker rights over corporate interests. Non compete agreements are basically uh, people working for the government who get awarded contracts with no competition, no bidding process. He's criticized the use of forced arbitration clauses in consumer contracts, which often limit consumers' ability to sue companies in court, advocating for the end of such practices. So, a lot of the agreements you get involved in, some of them are like the user agreements online, the tiny print that goes on forever that you just click rapidly and say, yep, I agree. A lot of times you're giving up the right to sue. And Gaetz was going after this concept. In 2020, Gaetz announced that he would no longer accept donations from PACs anymore, criticizing the influence of special criticizing this influence of special interests on politics. Gaetz has supported banning members of Congress from trading stocks, arguing that such trading gives lawmakers an unfair advantage due to their insider knowledge, thereby critiquing the financial influence in legislative decisions. He actually partnered with AOC on this, saying, yes, there's a lot that I don't agree with her on, but I can at least say she's not corrupt, and I'll work with her on things like this. Gaetz has spoken out against what he calls corporate welfare, where the government subsidies or bailouts benefit large corporations at the expense of taxpayers and smaller businesses. While often advocating for deregulation, he's also called for common sense environmental policies, criticizing how regulations often favor large corporations by creating barriers to entry for smaller competitors. In other words, environmental regulations that a large corporation can easily afford that a smaller one can't. Gaetz has suggested as Attorney General he would probably continue or expand on antitrust cases against predatory businesses, suggesting a continuation of some Biden administration policies. He introduced a concept called the Green Real Deal in 2019. This plan aimed at addressing climate change through free market solutions, technological innovation, and reducing government regulations. He co authored the Ainsworth Act in 2020. This legislation enabled centenarian military veterans to receive full pension benefits from the VA. Basically, really old. Promoted research into medical cannabis as part of the solving the opioid epidemic, showing support for alternative healthcare solutions. Gaetz has been vocal in his criticism of what he sees as the weaponization of federal agencies like the FBI and DOJ. He has criticized pharmaceutical companies for their pricing practices and influence over drug policy, advocating for reforms to make healthcare more affordable. While often advocating, he has attacked corporate lobbying and the revolving door between Congress and K Street, emphasizing that the GOP should not be beholden to corporate interests if it aims to represent the working class. Now, probably one of his bigger items was his decision to vote to oust House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. And this was influenced by several factors. One of it was a grievance over government spending. Gaetz criticized McCarthy for not adhering to conservative fiscal policies, particularly after McCarthy worked with Democrats to pass a continuing resolution, which he promised not to do, to fund the government. There were also secret deals alleged that Gaetz said about McCarthy had made secret side deals, especially concerning aid to Ukraine. Essentially, Gaetz promising people that that McCarthy promised that aid to Ukraine would get through despite whatever else was going on in Congress, and that was a no-go line as well. Essentially, he was the sole vote to kick off the entire thing, eventually ousting him. He put himself in a very exposed position to do this. He was up against a lot of very powerful figures. I heard lots of boomer cons just absolutely melting down over him doing this because they wanted things to move smoothly along rather than him trying to force issues. So the man's fearless. So that's something to be said. So if you're a liberal, this is probably the most anti big corporate, anti surveillance state pick you are going to see in the next 4 to 12 years. If you're a libertarian, there are a lot of good things here. I mean, there's some good potential to at least check some of the bad elements of government, if not actually reduce some of them. Not everything there is good. It's a mixed bag, but you can't get everything when you're a libertarian. If you're MAGA, this is your boy. This guy has been a fearless defender of Trump's policies, and you can pretty much guarantee that he's going to probably do a lot to root out the corruption in the Justice Department. Now, if you're a boomer con, you're going to have trouble wrapping your head around this because the box on the wall is telling you that Gaetz is a bad pick. You really need to get out and do your own research on this. Now, all in all, many of these legislative maneuvers that I just described to you were a surprise to me. I had spotted an article in the publication Unheard that sparked my curiosity, and they were suggesting that Gaetz had a lot to offer the left, which struck me pretty interesting. Read the article, so I incorporated their article into this video and expanded on their theme. So, with all that said, did you learn anything about Matt Gaetz in this video? What do you think? Are you more or less likely to support this? Are there things I left out? Because the research was skewed towards following the theme that Unheard came out with. Are there some negatives out there that I didn't touch on? And I deliberately did not talk about criminal investigations because I did that in a previous video. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithms brought you here and you're not a regular subscriber, look at my other titles. I get into a lot of things. There's certainly going to be a bunch of things that you're going to be interested in. Please consider subscribing. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, share it with them. Thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.